All right. Hello, Claudia. I am so excited to have you here. Welcome to the Heal with Grace podcast.
Thank you for having me, Grace. I've been looking forward to having this conversation with you today.
So I gave your intro, but why don't we hear from you in terms of just a little bit about yourself, what you do and how you came to do this?
Absolutely. So I am a nutrition and dietetic clinician, and I started my own clinical practice a decade ago. And then in the beginning, I was working with postpartum mothers. And then I realized that if I really wanted to support postpartum mothers, I had to look at their fertility journey. And that's when I stumbled across hypothalamic amenorrhea, which was something that I also experienced in my own skin. And since then, I've never looked back, and I've been supporting women that don't have a period, that are suffering from disorder behaviors around food and training, and they want to become moms, really.
Mm. It's a really important topic that I don't think is talked about as much, but it is very important, right? I mean, it happens a lot, especially when we've gone through eating disorder treatment, which we've talked a little bit on this podcast about eating disorder and how it connects, but I'm really excited to dive into the connection between eating disorder, nervous system, like feeling safe in our bodies, and how that actually ends up leading to missing periods, irregular periods, and infertility. So first of all, let's just actually define like what exactly is a missing or irregular period or amenorrhea. Like, how do you define
Yes.
that?
Absolutely. So thanks for asking this question. So hypothalamic amenorrhea is basically not having a period for more than 6 months. And that's quite frustrating because most of the women that come to work with me, they have seen a gynecologist, they have seen a fertility specialist, they've seen an endocrinologist, and sometimes they get the wrong diagnosis. Sometimes they hear words such as PCOS. Or POI, which is premature ovarian insufficiency. And basically, that sets them back by many years. And hypothalamic amenorrhea is a missing period caused by low body weight, but not all the time. Sometimes women can have a normal BMI and still suffering from hypothalamic amenorrhea. Is disorder behaviors around training, so training daily, or training too hard for your body, really, or training in order to change your physicality. But sometimes women can also lose their periods because they're going through grief and periods of stress or autoimmune conditions and also chronic pain, which is why I wanted to really open up these conversations with you today. So normally when women don't have a period, they don't think too much about it unless they want to have a baby or unless they break their arm or the foot, and so they have a broken bone basically, so they go down the rabbit hole of why do I have poor bone health. And normally the first step is going to the medical doctor, and the medical doctor normally advise a couple of things: eat more, take the pill. So they go and see an endocrinologist, and the advice is sometimes not dissimilar. If it's a good endocrinologist, they're going to say, okay, maybe it's better to have a look at your lifestyle diary, which kind of exercise you're doing, which kind of food you're eating. But it's always a good idea to go on the pill or go on HRT to protect your bone health. And so these women, they try to do it on their own. They try to follow these advices for a couple of years. So I call that period the quasi-recovery period, where they think that they're doing whatever they can, even though they're just scratching the surface. But very often they don't get to the core foundation, which is obviously sometimes gaining weight and changing the behaviors around training, but it's also addressing the mindset behind why am I so afraid of losing weight? I don't feel safe in being in my body. Why don't I allow myself to simply slow down and be? Which is where I've been seeing so many commonalities between hypothalamic amenorrhea recovery and also chronic pain recoveries.
I also wonder how much you go into the femininity of someone
Mm,
going through this, right? Because I mean, our cycle, our bleeding period is a very I mean, it makes us women, right?
yeah.
And so I actually just attended this training yesterday, which is why it's coming up around the emotional what did they call it? Like the emotions that sit within our womb and that happen, like grief, guilt, anger, repressed, like feminine embodiment that end up leading to things like amenorrhea and endometriosis and PCOS and like all of these things that women specifically go through. So I'm curious how much you see and work with understanding that connection to our just feminine body.
100%. So first of all, the period is the fifth vital sign. And I want
Mm.
everyone to be aware of that, because if your blood pressure was high, then you will start being worried about it. If your heart stops beating, then you will get worried about it. But for whatever reasons, if you don't have a period and you are a woman in the fertile window, no one say much about it, and yet it's still the fifth vital sign. We need it not only for fertility purposes, but also to protect our heart, our lungs, and our brain, and our bone health. I'm very passionate about this topic. But in regards to the feminine energy, when someone is going through hypothalamic amenorrhea, is completely suppressed, because these women, they don't have that fluctuations of hormones. They don't see that beautiful estrogen rising to then be combined with the rising progesterone. They're basically flatline. And when I say that femininity is suppressed, it's not only from a physiological standpoint, but it's also from an emotional standpoint. And you may recognize also, you're going to see some commonalities once again with chronic pain, but normally women that suffer from hypothalamic amenorrhea, they tend to have a type A personality. They tend to go, and they are very afraid of simply be. And they're perfectionists. They're people pleasers. They give their all energy out, and they never refill their own cup. So these women, normally they suffer from anxiety. They're very dry hair, dry skin, dry vagina. So even the sex drive is very, very low, which is, it makes sense. They're not in a fertile type of window, right? They have problems sleeping because there is that constant fight and flight going on. So they suffer from insomnia. They wake up during the night to go and pee, which is a very clever mechanism of the body to wake them up just in case that there is a problem. And then they're very controlling around food, controlling about what the body looks like, and controlling when it comes to their exercise. Because if they control their environment, then they can feel some sort of peace inside. And unfortunately, that's a fake way of controlling themselves. The reality is that the more controlling you are, the less control you really have on your emotions and your psychology. Does that make sense, Grace?
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that, especially that last part, because that's so true. The more we try to control, which by the way, yes, you just described someone with chronic pain, chronic illness, chronic fatigue, that those personality characteristics of being highly anxious, controlled, rigid, perfectionistic, needing to get it right all the time, type A, that totally fits all of this. So it makes a lot of sense. And we always think that the more we try to do something perfectly, the better it's going to get. And especially when it comes to healing too. And I'm sure you see this with the people you work with, where maybe they try to like do everything you're trying to tell them to do with intensity, right? With like a sense of control. And really, we need a little bit more flow and relaxed and surrendering, if you will, to the process, because it is a process. Do you see that?
Yeah, sometimes women come to me and they're like, okay, Claudia, I'm ready to go all in. So I need your accountability. I need your guidance because I want to go all in. I want to eat all the food. I want to stop exercising. I want to get my period back so then I can get pregnant. And my reaction normally is like, okay, slow down, because you're trying to recover from the same mentality that gave you hypothalamic amenorrhea in the first place.
Mm.
What is going on? Why there is this sense of urgency? What are you trying to control? Because if we don't get to the core beliefs, if we don't get to the root cause of why you have developed this condition in the first place, chances are that yes, if you eat enough, if you stop moving, if you sit in the couch for 3 months, your period is gonna come. And if you're lucky enough, you're gonna be able to spot ovulation and get pregnant. But what's gonna happen after you have the baby? Are you ready to go through this whole journey many, many times in your life? Because I've seen that happening more often than not, women that
Mhm.
recover very quickly without addressing the mindset, without addressing the reasons why they develop hypothalamic amenorrhea or an eating disorder in the first place, and then they go back to square one, which is not really square one if you have already done the journey. But yeah, it feels like going through the same process once again. And the second time that you go through the same process, it feels quite, I don't know, disheartened.
Mm.
And you start asking yourself, why me? What is wrong with me? Why other women have it so easy? Why other women can go to the gym, and whenever I go to the gym I lose my period? Why if I eat a little bit less and I change my body, then all of a sudden my period disappears? And I see that really there are feelings of frustration and overwhelm,
Mm.
which is why I always go back to the questions of, what is your body telling you? Why has your body shut down? Why is your body telling you you're not ready for a baby? What are you scared of? What are you fighting for? What are you running away from?
What are some of those maybe mindsets or emotional stances that you work with people that with that root cause, right? Underneath the diet and less exercise and things like that. Like what are some common maybe example that you could give?
Yeah, well, first of all, like, for example, let's think about the fear of weight gain. Like, women have this fear of gaining weight. But why is that? And where is that stemming from? What does that mean for them? Because if they were bullied in the past, gaining weight or actually losing weight is a protective mechanism, and gain weight is loaded with fear. Or maybe they didn't get enough hugs when they were kids, or they didn't have um that relationship with the body since they were young. They've never gone through the process of actually accepting the body for what it was when it was changing, when going through puberty, and so on and so forth. So for them, gaining weight is actually very scary. And it all boils down to feeling unsafe. Because when you're not feeling safe of the person that you are, then you're going to try to control your external environment. So, if you were in a state of high anxiety, would that be easier for you to go to the gym and jump on the treadmill, or actually sit down with your thoughts and try to understand where that anxiety is coming from and try to move through that, right? So it's very normal for some of these women, most of these women, to actually decide to go to the gym. Takes half an hour, the anxiety go away, I put a band-aid on it, and then I see what happens tomorrow. And instead, in the work that I try to do with them is, yes, let's have a look at your nutrition, let's have a look at your exercise, but also let's understand what's going on here. Why is your body, why are you afraid of gaining this weight? Why are you afraid of changing your lifestyle? What are you afraid that is going to happen? I had this woman, for example, that she was very resistant in terms of doing this process, this recovery process. And within 12 months from saying yes, from committing to it, she changed her career. She broke up with her fiance. She met someone else entirely. She got married, and now she's already pregnant. She got her period back, and she actually welcomed some much needed weight gain. And she decided to work out in the gym and gain some muscles instead of running marathons like she used to do. So sometimes there is that fear of, if I say yes to myself, then I actually have to put some effort. I have to do the work. I can actually fail. And I think that that's very scary in itself. And my job is to actually support them and guide them through this whole process, hold their hands sometimes, so that not only they can eat breakfast when they wake up in the morning, but they are not in this state of constant fear. Does that
Mhm.
resonate, Grace?
Oh, totally. Yeah, because you're talking about looking underneath the sometimes structural skills that we need, like for you, like nutrition and exercise and understanding the skills to regulate your nervous system. And I say this all the time, right? Those are helpful things that you can do, but really underneath is looking at how you're treating yourself, like what your identity is wrapped up in. That's what I kind of heard you talk about, right? We're asking people to look at who they think they are, or really who they think they are supposed to be, what they've been following, right? And instead we're unraveling and saying, like, actually, we should look at that because I don't think it's really working for you. And that's scary. Of course, it's scary because you're changing probably a lot of what you know about your life or what you think you know about yourself. So one, it takes time, and two, it takes courage. It's a lot of courage to do that. And that's usually where I find people get stuck, is when they say they're doing all the things, but they may not really be looking at like what's underneath the surface, like who they are, what the relationships they're having, the career that they're in. Those things matter. And there can be a lot of resistance to go there. So
You
yeah,
hit the nail in the
totally.
head. It's the identity piece. It's letting go
Hmm.
of your old self and welcoming a new self when you don't know what the new self is going to look like.
Hmm.
And that requires a lot of courage. And sometimes it's so much easier to stay in the comfort zone, which is not comfortable, but it's just familiar. When knowing that if you want to grow, you have to go through that level of discomfort. And I mean, it's okay if someone is not ready to do the work. Maybe they're not going to be ready now, they're going to be ready in 3 months. But in the meantime, it's very important to open up our ears, our hearts, and actually welcome new opportunities. Otherwise, yeah, otherwise you can be stuck for a long time. And that's also very true. If I look at my story, I was stuck for 10 years simply because it was much easier for me to go and see another fertility specialist and another gynecologist and accepting a diagnosis of PCOS instead of sitting down and realize that I needed to change my lifestyle. I had to let go of my running. I had to let go of my running friends. I had to let go of my 4 coffees a day. So I had to do all of that and to embrace a different personality, someone that was slower, someone that didn't have to be productive all the time, and someone that was just okay for simply being instead of always doing. And funnily enough, once again, personally speaking, I was very prone to burnout. And once I recovered my period, that's when I stopped burning out. Because once again, there was that identity piece of I am worth it only if I'm productive. But the reality is that I'm worth it simply because I am a human being and I am currently breathing and I'm living in this wonderful planet that is teaching me to do the opposite of what I actually do for my body to thrive.
That piece, the worthy piece,
Mm,
that's super important, because that is what we're really talking about, especially with this population. When you know, if you're listening to this and you resonate, you might be one of those people who are constantly doing and going. I mean, that's our society perpetuates that and like pats us on the back and gives us, a gold star for doing more and being more and running more and all the things. And that's not most of how us human beings are really meant to be and to live. But we learned that the more we do, more worthy we are. But it's false. It's false truth. So I'm
absolutely.
really glad you said that. Yeah, like we are worthy just as we are, you know?
100%. And lately, I've also seen this crossover between women suffering from hormonal imbalances, missing periods, hypothalamic amenorrhea, and once again, burnout and pain. And
Mm,
sometimes they come to see me and they said, "Oh, Claudia, I need some help to get my period back." And then just in passing, they speak about their trauma or they speak about the fact that they haven't food for the last 7 days or they've had to deal with an autoimmune disease for decades, or they had chronic back pain, chronic neck pain, chronic gut pain. And it's fascinating for me to see that as women or as human beings, we are okay with suppressing all that pain, all that discomfort, just to get to the next thing. just
Mm.
to manage to get to the next level in our career, just to get to to that place that we have been taught that is the right place for us to go to. I don't know if I'm even making sense right now, Grace. I'm just rambling a little bit.
Oh, you totally are. You totally are. I have a specific question for you if you're open to it.
Yeah.
Along your journey, you
Mm.
mentioned PCOS and coming to the realization that, oh, you had to let go of your lifestyle of, kind of what you
Yeah.
thought you were supposed to be doing. What was that moment for you? What helped you realize that? Like after those, I think you said 10 years.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, when I went through my recovery journey, the basically Instagram was not present. So it was
Mhm.
just the beginning state of Instagram. So it's not that I could actually check in what other people were doing.
Yeah.
YouTube was non-existent. So I had to do most of the work on my own. And I tried very hard to find that support net. I went to see a psychologist, I went to see a naturopath. And I remember that this naturopath, she was a fertility specialist.
Mm.
And I was so looking forward to that appointment, especially because it was going to be $300 for just half an hour. And we're talking about 10 years ago. So $300 10 years
Mm.
ago, like $600 nowadays.
Mhm.
Um, and I walked in with this diet that I had filled in for the past 7 days. And I was just waiting for her to tell me, Claudia, you just need to eat more. Just sit down, enjoy your breakfast, enjoy your meals, allow yourself to have a croissant and muffin whenever you crave one. And instead, she went down a rabbit hole of DNA testing, supplements, and I left that day with $2,000 worth of supplements. And I kept going back to similar specialists, and I tried kinesiology and obviously go gluten free, go dairy free. You're very inflamed. When I was not inflamed at all. I was just depleted. I I did it all. Acupuncture, I cannot even remember all the modalities. And mind you, these modalities are wonderful. And now I love my acupuncturist, but not because I want her to fix my period, but simply because it's such a nice moment for me to, let it go and just be present and be with my body. So I don't want to dismiss any of those modalities because they have a place. It's just that they were not working for me because no one really told me where the core problem was. So I had to sit down with myself. I had a long conversation with my husband, and he mentioned in passing, well, do you think that waking up at 4:30 every single morning, just going for a 5K run and having breakfast at 11 o'clock in the morning is actually helping us to have a baby? And that question was so very stupid, but it really opened up a window of opportunities for me. I was that kind of person that I was always wearing a fit watch. Like if I was at a wedding, I was like wearing a beautiful dress with a fitness watch in it because I couldn't let it go. And if I didn't get to the right amount of steps at nighttime, I had to go to the bathroom, hide from everyone, and jump jacks. So there was that obsession. But once again, it's because I was feeling so anxious. And plus, I wanted a baby so much. And so the exercise and controlling my food was actually kind of a way of suppressing the anxiety around not being able to become a mom. And then after I had that conversation with my husband, I met another wonderful nutritionist, and she actually went through the same thing. And she said, why don't we work together? Why don't you just book in with me for the next 3 months? So we go through the core foundations, we do some inner work, and let's see what happens. And that's when my life unraveled completely because I finally got in touch with my real needs, and I finally got honest with myself because it was like the 5 stages of grief. And first you are in denial, and then you fight it. You just don't want to accept it. And then you start making changes, but not enough of them until you get to the level of acceptance. And I had to learn that I had to let go of all the beliefs that I had acquired since I was a little girl. Because obviously I am a baby of the 80s, early 80s. So I grew up in that environment where everyone was going low fat, low carb, everyone was weighing themselves. Everyone was talking about the weight. There were so many magazines like Weight Watchers, Slimming Words, the Kellogg Diet. And so for an 8-year-old kid that just being brought up in that environment, it's very natural that you have your own disordered beliefs around food when growing up. So I had to unlearn all of that. And that was a long journey. Took me longer than 3 months for sure. But it was definitely worth it, especially being a mom now of 2 kids. I can finally change the conversation and break the intergenerational trauma. And yeah, and changing the life of also the other women that stumble upon my work.
Thank
Thank
you
you
for
for
sharing
allowing me to
that.
share this.
Yeah. Do you still struggle at all with PCOS?
Never had PCOS. So that was a
Oh,
wrong
okay.
misdiagnosis. Yes.
Mm,
And that's also something that I invite women to really think about. Is that
mm,
really PCOS or is it something else? Because
mm,
PCOS and hypothalamic amenorrhea, they have so many crossovers. And if you don't have a well-versed practitioner, he's not going to pick up on the difference between the two, which
mm,
is a shame, is a real shame. So never had PCOS. In reality, was hypothalamic amenorrhea all the way
mm,
through. And no. So I regained my period. I managed to get pregnant with my first one, got my period back, managed to get pregnant with my second one,
mm.
got my pregnant 6 months after he was born, and that's it. That's my life, and I'm still blessed with the regular periods. I don't know for how many years in front of me, but for now I just keep them, all of them.
Yeah. And that's a really big shift too. I mean, there's a lot of negativity around having periods, right? Around the bleeding period. And you just mentioned the notion of like wanting to hold on to them in a way, like it's special, right? That's a big shift that I hear. Can you tell me more about that?
Absolutely. So if we look at what it means for a woman to have a period, so first of all, it's fundamental for our bone health. If you want
Mm,
to avoid brittle bones early
mm,
on or later on in life, I have clients that are 23 and they're suffering from severe osteoporosis, which is a shame because the only
mhm,
solution in the long term, if they don't get the period back as soon as possible, is going to be medications. And the medications for bone health are extremely aggressive and they
mm,
come with horrible symptoms, not to mention breaking a hip, which, by the way, I had to go through, and breaking a bone is not pleasant, extremely painful. So, first of all, whenever I get my period, whenever I actually see blood, I think I'm protecting my bones, which is something that to me is very precious. Secondly, I'm protecting my productivity, I'm protecting my creativity, I'm protecting my brain because most women in a menopausal age they die because of a cardiac attack. Once again, because that levels of estrogen dips, so the heart is not protected, and they are more prone to experience dementia and Alzheimer.
mm,
Because once again, those hormones are not protecting our brain cells any longer. So just from that standpoint, I think that a period is just a miracle and something that I really feel blessed to have every single month. Not to mention that ovulation goes hand in hand without having a period, because ovulation is another beautiful way of our body to tell us you're doing well, you're nourishing well, you're moving well, you're sleeping well. And if you wanted to, you could have a baby because here is feeling pretty safe. So just go ahead and have some fun time with your partner so then we can procreate. And it doesn't matter if you don't want to have babies any longer or if you have never wanted a baby in the first place, still knowing that your body is working, that's a miracle, once again. And then there is that feminine part that comes in. Back in the days, I thought that my rhythm was a circadian rhythm, like my husband. Wake up in the morning, plenty of energy, go to sleep at night, completely exhausted. And then I came to understand that we go through the infraradian rhythm, thanks to the beautiful work of Alisa Vitti and Dr. Aviva Rom. They explained to us that we have a 28-day cycles, that it's very similar to the lunar cycle, where we go through phases that we are very productive, very creative, more extrovert than we normally are, and then periods where we are meant to actually sit in a quiet space, just be on our own and recharge our batteries. And until I learned that, it, of course, I was going through these periods of burnout because I never completely rested. And what I normally see with women with hypothalamic amenorrhea is that they wake up early in the morning, they go to the gym, they have a coffee, they go to work, then they have breakfast at some point while going through the emails. So can you imagine like the level of cortisol eating while you're going through the emails? It's like it's so not great for our nervous system. And then all day they're at work, they come back from work. If they're a mom, they have to rush to pick up the kids. If you're no moms, then they have to rush to go somewhere else. And then you get to the end of the day and you sit down in your couch, you scroll through social medias, once again cortisol inducing, or you watch like something on TV, maybe even the news. I stopped watching the news 10 years ago. My brain cannot handle that. um, and then you try and go to sleep, and for whatever reasons you have vivid dreams, or you can't fall asleep, or you wake up in the middle of the night. And now it all makes sense, but it didn't back in the days when my knowledge was very limited compared to now. Did I answer your question, Grace?
Yes,
I went through
definitely.
a
I mean,
tangent.
yeah, but it started, I mean, I think about the people, it is very normal these days for women to be on a birth control or be on something and their doctors say, like, it's fine not to have period. This one just doesn't make you have a period, you know? And I never understood why, but I always had a felt sense of, even before I knew all of this, I just had a felt sense of like, I don't know, that can't be good for you. You know, I didn't understand why or what it would mean, but I was like, aren't we supposed to, you know, we're meant to do this, something. So I just think about that often because I hear it a lot, you know, like it's just normal. Oh yeah, I don't have periods, you know,
Mhm.
people that I guess in no way choose not to, and there's people that like that you work with that have irregular or can't. And I think it's really important. I'm glad you mentioned that topic of just actually what does it really mean for our bodies to go through this cycle? It's sacred. It's, you know, makes us women and who we are. And yeah, so that's really what I wanted to hear about because I think it's not talked about enough. And then,
Grace,
oh
sorry,
yeah,
sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you. But
go
in regards to the pill, I was wondering, have you ever heard of the post-pill divorced?
divorce. No, but I know there's a lot of movement around getting off the pill.
Yeah, so basically, women, especially back in the 80s and 90s, they were put on very heavy pills like
Mhm.
Diana and other names. And they would come off the pill just to have a baby. And when they came
Mm.
off the pill, because the pheromone changed so dramatically, all of a sudden they realized that they were not attracted to their life partners. And so back at the time, so many women, so many couples went through divorce because of that. And that can give you an idea of how much the pill can actually suppress your reproductive system. The pill does not regulate it, doesn't fix it. It just suppress it. If you look at someone that it's on the pill, you will see that everything is flatline, ovulation is not happening, and that progesterone that you're getting is progestin, which is a chemical version of progesterone that is not really welcomed by our body.
Mm.
And so when everything is flatline, then obviously you cannot really understand who you are and what you're attracted to. And sorry, I just
Fascinating.
had to add that because I still find it so
Yeah.
incredibly fascinating.
That's super fascinating. I mean, it does, it completely shifts. How could it not change? Our hormones
Mm.
make up so much of who we are, how we see, how we feel, and the cycles that we go through. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Um, when you were mentioning, sorry, I just completely lost my train of thought. Oh, okay. Can you tell us about you were talking about a normal day, right? Of someone waking up, working out, not having breakfast till later, going through emails, like that whole
Mm.
thing, a normal day, if you will, for many
Yeah.
human beings right now. What do you help people shift? Like, what would you shift during that day? How do you change that?
So if someone is listening and they are going through hypothalamic amenorrhea, and they just want to really focus on their reproductive system and to get in touch with their femininity, there are a few things that I really would encourage them to do. The first one is, if they can, to sleep in the morning. So if they want to go to the gym, if they want to exercise, just do it after breakfast, lunchtime, after work, as a way to distress. But if that's possible, and I do understand that every single life is different, but if it's possible, see if you can sleep in the morning instead of going to the gym on an empty stomach. Then make sure that when you wake up, you don't check social media, that you don't check your emails. Allow your nervous system to have that half an hour when not much is actually happening. Give a hug to your pet, give a hug to your partner, give a hug to a family member, give a hug to yourself, for goodness sake. We never hug ourselves. Or speak kindly to yourself, maybe having a jar next to your bed and just picking up a thought that you can think about for the day, and obviously an inspiring thought. Even better, sitting meditation, do some visualization, do some of that before having something warm, before having a tea, before having a coffee. And then make sure that you have breakfast. Make sure that you have a warm breakfast to support your womb. After that, I think that a woman has much more capacity to deal with the outside world, to deal with the demands that she's going to be exposed to, because as a mom, she's going to be left with very little energy for the rest of the day. As a business worker, especially if you're working on your own, well, I think that you're a solopreneur as well, and you are pulled on so many directions every single day. You are the CEO of your business, you are the marketing manager, you are the sales manager, you are the podcaster and all of that. So you're pulled in so many different directions. So having that first part of the day where you can actually settle your nervous system, settle your body, and also nourishing yourself from the inside out with a nice, warm, decent breakfast, and just being in the state of peace can be a game changer. So if I had to invite someone to make one shift, it would definitely be that, focusing on the morning practice. And then if that's available, to being in a very parasympathetic state every single time the food is present, allowing our digestive system to do its job. Because so many of us nowadays, we are experiencing IBS, bloating, constipation, passing winds, burping, heartburn. And on most cases, we can actually fix that by slowing down and just, having some time to simply eat, which does not mean listening to a podcast, answering an email, speaking with someone else. Just be present with the food.
It makes me think of, have you read the book, The Slow Down Diet by Mark? Ooh, I forgot his name, but I'll put it below. Um,
I
it's
have to.
uh, it's not a diet, and I don't like why they named it that, but I think it was back in the 90s when, diet, you need that word to market, I'm guessing. I don't know. But it's a great book because it talks about exactly what you're sharing, right? It's not a diet. I think it has maybe one chapter around just like eating whole foods and a variety, and that's about it. The rest of it is truly about how we eat actually changes the digestion of the food, right? How we eat, what we're thinking about it, how we're slowing down. I mean, everything that you just talked about. Um, and I think it's really powerful because it makes such a difference. So
Well,
yeah.
we have digestive enzymes, right? They start in our mouth, salivary
Mhm.
enzymes. They're meant to break down particles of food. They're meant to shoot them from one part to the other of the body. If we don't produce enough digestive enzymes, salivary enzymes, and hydrochloric acids, we are not going to be able to break down the proteins within the food. We are not going to be able to ship the nutrients to the right parts of our body. So many people think that gluten-free, for example, is a way to fix their gut. And for some people, yeah, absolutely, that's valid, especially if you're celiac. But sometimes it's simply that our body doesn't have enough time to process the protein of gluten, which is a hard one to digest. So the problem is not the gluten, it's actually how you eat and when you eat the gluten. And if you're thinking of fertility as well, you have to teach your body that you're in a safe place, in a place where you can actually welcome a baby into your life. Because if you're constantly in that state of fight and flight where you wake up in the morning and you have to run, when you cannot even sit down for a meal for 5 or 10 minutes, how is your body going to perceive that it's okay for a baby to come to the world? How are you going to take care of that baby? And so
Yeah.
these changes can be great also for someone that is thinking about fertility and is looking at a different way to live life, then it's available to them, because the changes that we have discussed, they're not really dramatic. It's not completely changing the way that they eat or completely changing the lifestyles. It's just making small tweaks that can lead to great results, like a domino effect. And I definitely need to read that book, Slow Down Diet, because I didn't come across it, but it sounds very pertinent.
Yeah, I mean, I'm guessing there's a lot in there you probably already practiced, but yeah, it's a good one. It's a short, good read too.
Thank
Um,
you.
question that might take a while. I don't know. We'll see. But what do you think of IVF then from this approach?
Uh, I think that IVF is a blessing,
Mm,
but it depends how it's approached. Because I'm gonna give you two examples. You have a woman that hasn't had a period for 3 years, and she's like, F it, I'm gonna do IVF. Or she hasn't had a period for 4 months, and once again, F it, I'm gonna do IVF. In that case, I think there is that rushed energy. Once again, that type A perfectionist personality. I want to do it now, and I want to do it well, and I want to control the outcome, control the process. If IVF is approached from that perspective, I get it. I tried it. The chances of working are actually not that great. So research shows that if you start IVF when you are in a state of rest and digest, let's call it, where you have already regained your period, where you have already slowed down in the morning, where you have already ate all the nourishing foods, your chances of getting pregnant, but not only that, of maintaining the pregnancy in the first trimester and having a healthy baby and having a better postpartum phase are completely different. Because when women go to IVF, is because when couples go to IVF, is because they want to have a baby, but they never think about the next 3 months, what that pregnancy is gonna look like. Also, I've noticed that when women, the chances of suffering from hyperemesis gravidarum is actually heightened when you go through IVF, simply because of the extent of hormones that get pumped into your body. And secondly, they don't think so much about the first 3 months, but also making sure that the pregnancy is a viable one, that it sticks. You don't want to get pregnant. You want to have a baby. And that's also a mindset that a shift in mindset that I would like women to welcome. You don't want to get pregnant. You want to deliver a healthy baby. So in a nutshell, I would say that I'm pro science. I think that IVF is a blessing. So many people are in this world because of IVF, but I always question why you're doing it, if you have already tried everything else before approaching that, and if you have already done the work. Because doing a few months of preconception before approaching IVF, I think that it makes the whole process easier and safer.
that makes so much sense. The balanced approach, right? The way we do something, the intention we go in with changes
Yeah.
so much. Yeah.
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 And
Okay.
I don't want that people, women to think, or couples to think, oh, I'm doing IVF, so I'm a failure. No, no, not at all. In certain situations, honestly, IVF is the only way. There are women that gets into menopause and ovarian insufficiency at the age of 30. So in that situation, I would say freeze your eggs as soon as you can, and let's see if we can get some beautiful embryo working for you. I would never tell them to do some work together for 5 years and then try naturally. That would be a disservice to them. But if you're in good health and your hormones are a little bit all over the shop, and if you have 6 months in front of you, I will say, let's see if we can do it naturally. Let's see if we can save you $100,000. And then if not, then let's go with IVF as an option.
Okay. Yeah. Makes so much sense. Thank you. Thank you. That came to me because, it's a big part of plenty of people's journeys. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah. Okay. So I've loved this conversation. I think it's going to be really, really helpful, to our audience. Is there anything else around what we've talked about or just in general about what you do that you feel like is important to know, like what you want people to know?
Well, I would just simply say to someone that is listening, that is going through these challenges, to really focus on their body, like supporting the body, but not only from a physical perspective, because that's the one that we can control. That's the first one that we can go to, but also do that emotional and spiritual work, or just finding themselves in a place where they can feel safe within their environment, within themselves. Because
Mhm.
if they do that work, everything else is going to become so much easier and so much more manageable and approachable in the future. And I think that I'm happy to leave you just with this sentence.
Yeah. Okay. Super helpful. Well, thank you so much again. Really appreciate it. And we'll link everything below, but you can just let people know how do they find you? What are you doing right now? What are you offering?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you are a big fan of Instagram, is ha.fertility.nutritionist. HA stands for hypothalamic amenorrhea. Otherwise, I'm on Facebook and everywhere else with Nourished by Claudia. But thank you
Yeah.
for linking everything down below, Grace.
Yeah. And I saw your YouTube, I think, right? You have a lot of great
Yeah,
information and videos out there. So yeah.
absolutely. I forget about that. And I'm looking forward to have you on my YouTube, by the way. So YouTube channel, Nourished by Claudia.
Awesome. All right. Thank you. See y'all later.
Bye, Grace.